Welcome back to Media7. Bernard Hickey has not only been a valued guest on this program, he can be found across the news media talking about markets and money. But as Jose Barbosa explains, he recently went to a new place.
Reject all those who would place tariffs and regulation on labour and goods. Instead, embrace the mutual consent of the market through consumer demand.
Such are the edicts of free market capitalism, and until recently they seem to serve us pretty well.
Oh, right, that sounds fantastic.
But now the world's trying to pick up the pieces, and what was supposed to be a fair system is increasingly seen as unfair. Into this steps Bernard Hickey. As a financial journalist, he's been extremely visible not only on TV, but also through the independent market research website interest.co.nz, where he is the managing editor. And until recently, he's also been a committed believer in the free market. But on the 25th of September, Hickey posted this entry on his column on the New Zealand Herald website. His meaning was clear.
The economic god of completely free markets and capital flows is not worth believing in anymore, and we must look for other things to believe in and do.
He attacked the multinationals who move their operations to low-wage markets, often under the guise of redistributing wealth.
But all it did was to reduce real wages for the middle and underclasses in developed economies, who then promptly borrowed more to keep spending as if they were richer. It was a recipe for instability.
And he argued that an unrestrained free market run by the elite is going to end in chaos. This directly challenges those who believe such a system can only lead to the best outcomes for all.
We will not live by your commandments. We're free.
There is no freedom without the law.
So, has Hickey swapped sides? And what does poor old Roger think?
I'm joined now by Bernard Hickey to talk about that column. Welcome, Bernard.
G'day.
Well, OK, let's get to the cut to the chase. You were an apostle of the free market, you've lost your religion, and you're quoting Marx. What happened?
Yeah, that's right. 20 years, I believed that the way to do things was to open it up, to be free, to allow countries to trade with each other and allow people to borrow as they will, and to get out of the business of telling us what to do. I grew up, like many people my age, under the thumb of Robert Muldoon, and the way to freedom was to cast off these regulations. But the way that, not just New Zealand, the whole of the financial world has developed over the last 10 years has essentially blown up capitalism. That we've gone completely into the area of too much debt, of spending too much, of believing that we could just borrow and put it off to another day. But Armageddon has arrived, the day has arrived when we have to pay the bill, and we've worked out that those completely free movements of capital, of foreign exchange freedom, it has eventually ended with a whole group of people, middle and underclasses, not just in the US but also in parts of Europe, have been made poor by this change. And although there are many people who are out of poverty in the developing world, it has dawned on everyone in the last 6 months or so that it's not going to work.
And the remarkable thing is that the so-called Great Moderation was the received wisdom. It was what people were taught at school, at university. It's what every business journalist thought. It turned out to be the opposite. It was supposed to be a recipe for stability, and it turned out to be the opposite.
Well, that's right. They called it the Great Moderation, low interest rates, growth that seemed to go on forever. We'd found the miracle. We'd managed to pull people out of poverty in the developing world. People were rich in the developed world. Everything was good in the world. But as it turned out, it was a fraud based on increasing debt within the developed world. And it was perpetuating and, in fact, deepening a transfer of wealth from the middle and underclasses to an extremely wealthy upper class. And now we're seeing, in the last 6 months or so, this clash between a broader population who've just worked out this fraud and those people at the very top who are saying, I'm not going to give up this wealth, I'm not going to give up my hold on power, I'm going to try and change the rules. And that's what we're seeing actually in the States.
I've seen comments under your recent columns from people I know are ACT Party members. We saw Roger Douglas there, pretty much implying that you're an idiot. What's the general response been?
Well, it's surprising actually. I've had a lot of people come in and say, finally someone's come out and said that the emperor has no clothes, that this system we've been working under for 20 years perhaps has a few flaws and we need to look at it again. And I'm not the only one who's saying this. And I think part of the reason for the surprise at what I was saying is that people hadn't heard it before much in New Zealand. But if you go onto the blogosphere and look at what's being said in media all around the world, particularly in the United States and Europe, where this crisis is much more intense, these debates are being had in public and have been in public for a couple of years now.
And I have to say, Alan Bollard, who was on our show a couple of weeks ago, in his book says much the same as you, perhaps in gentler language. So when establishment figures like that are having this rethink, is this going past the debate stage in other countries? You know, is it going into action?
Well, that's right. You're seeing riots in parts of Europe. You're seeing real pain in the political system in America, and we've got the lead up to the November elections. We've got the growth of the Tea Party movement, which some believe has been subverted by extremely wealthy interests who have got behind it. You're seeing a group of people lashing out in the only way they know how. And when you look back into history, the period where this sort of economic turmoil that turned into political turmoil, the only place you can look is the Depression and what happened after that. We saw a whole global economy shift. We saw changes in currencies, and unfortunately we saw wars. Now, we've got a couple on at the moment, which are a factor in all of this.
I'm interested in what Brazil's done. They've moved to control the flow of cheap foreign capital into their economy to protect their currency. I get the feeling that had they done that 2 years ago, they might have faced, capital flight. They would have been assailed by the financial press. Has that happened? What's the response?
No, exactly. Everyone's saying, OK, that's the response in these currency wars. People are talking about openly currency wars. You have the Federal Reserve devaluing its currency. Again, over the last couple of days, the Federal Reserve Chairman has said we're going to print. Got the Bank of Japan intervening in the last couple of days to print more money and to cut its interest rates to 0%. This is forcing capital out of the developed world, out of increasingly indebted developed worlds, into the emerging economies and commodity-linked economies like New Zealand and Australia and Brazil and South Africa. And these economies are fighting for their lives, really, saying we can't allow our currencies to rise and destroy our export sectors. We have to do something. So the Brazilians have imposed a tax on inflows, and what I'm saying is that we need to think about this too. We have to come up with a defence strategy in these currency wars.
Now, I wonder, with all these heretical ideas, when do we get to know what the new normal is? Because I don't think we're seeing it yet, are we?
No, things have changed. This is the thing that is surprising so many people. We thought we'd go back to that good old days of borrowing more, spending more, using up the resources we have on this planet until nothing's left. But now, because of the way the financial markets have imploded and how they're not recovering, people are going, maybe I need to think about how much I use oil. Maybe I need to think about how much debt I have. Maybe I need to think about how I organise the economy and capital flows. Maybe we need a new Bretton Woods. Maybe we need to reimpose the gold standard. This is stuff that's being talked about.
Well, I'm sure we'll find out eventually how the movie ends. Bernard Hickey, thank you very much.